We are dreaming of a world without borders, of achieving the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals with a new breed of leaders who think borderless beyond the quick win now mindset. I am Lina, Executive and Leadership Coach. Together with Duncan Skelton, Catherine McGillivray-Pronto, and Tatiana Petrova, we believe that there is a way of relating that opens up understanding, belonging, transcendence, and possibility that removes unnecessary boundaries. Through monthly dialogues, we co-created the 6-part podcast series called Borderless, Discovering Borderless-Centred Leadership. These are unscripted live recordings with minimal editing centering around 4 principles: act now future-oriented, iterative and anticipatory, humanistic and interspecies, and say no to yes. Have a listen and join us in leading through a borderless lens. Hi, I'm Lina. I'm here with Duncan, Tatiana, and Catherine. This is our first podcast series on the topic of borderless-centered leadership. And for this very first session, we are going to talk about what borderless-centered leadership means for each one of us. And why is it important? Also, the 4 of us met in a co-active leadership program last year. And the whole idea started for me as a quest for work beyond the program. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. Duncan, would you like to start us off here?
Lina, thank you. My name's Duncan Skelton. I'm an executive and leadership coach. As Lina said, it's nice to be back with you 3, having spent a lot of time on that leadership program together. I joined with you, Lina, because your leadership quest back then, you were so charismatic during our leadership retreats and so clearly intent and focused on creating what is now emerging as borderless-centered leadership. I was keen to support that. You provided some thinking and ideas that gave resonance to and language for some of the things that I've been thinking and feeling myself. So what is borderless-centered leadership for me? It seems to tie very strongly for me onto this idea that everybody has personal leadership. Everybody is a leader of themselves, first and foremost. In fact, we have to be able to lead ourselves before we can lead groups of people in service of something worthwhile. And so this idea of moving beyond borders, moving beyond constraints within ourselves, for me resonates directly with self-limiting beliefs. The idea that we're actually capable of far more than we probably imagine for ourselves, and that we get to create from what is truly possible rather than limiting ourselves to creating on what we've learned from our past. So for me, borderless-centered leadership really begins on the inside and grows from there. And that's kind of my access point to this conversation, is that inner development. That's what it means for me. Catherine.
Great,
What does it mean for you?
So I'm Catherine McGillivray-Pronto. I'm a global head of talent management and culture in a Swiss tech company, and also a coach in my spare time. During this leadership program, I was also on assignment in Japan as interim general manager for our Japanese entity. And so I had many practical examples of borderlessness not being lived, of people working together without even trying to understand each other. And so this is why this theme of borderless-centered leadership appealed to me and was very important to me. For me, what it means is, first of all, that leadership is both open and anchored. So when I say open, it means that it's borderless, it's beyond roles, beyond cultures, beyond expectations, but it does require that you have a strong inner center as an anchor. So this could be your values or in my case, it's my life purpose. That's kind of my first vision of borderless-centered leadership. It requires capabilities that are normal human capabilities, but sometimes we forget that they're also leadership capabilities. Things like encouraging belonging, encouraging understanding, using understanding as a spark rather than going straight into a meeting, going to the task, just spending a few minutes to try and understand each other, especially when you're working across borders with different cultures. That's, for me, the core. And Tatiana, what does it mean for you?
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you all. It's a pleasure to be part of this group in this format again. And my name is Tatiana Petrova. I am executive and leadership coach. And my path to borderless-centered leadership was initially similar to you, Lina, a way to keep the post-program connectedness going. But then I started to question myself, okay, what is the real underlying theme that makes it mine, right? That makes me fully lean in. And it was a little bit of a journey, right? So my career started as psychologist of development, researching conflict and how to make it mechanism for growth rather than suffering. And just around the leadership program, I've been doing a lot of work with organizations on teaching people to handle conflict in that way. And my initial idea was that it is really truly a lack of skillfulness in conflict that creates unnecessary suffering. So people kind of don't know how to talk about what matters in a very divergent and sometimes heated space safely. And if we gave leaders and their teams opportunity to do that, to kind of hold their truths, to talk about wants and needs in a safe, respectful way that kind of creates that safety container around conflict, then the problem is solved. But then I realized that there is an underlying theme there, and that is heart at peace. In order to kind of be in conflict and use it for growth and really leverage its capacity for connectedness, we need a heart at peace. And what is that? Right? It's a heart that doesn't need to wrong another to be right. And that is a very special presence, and it is borderless in its essence.
Yeah, for me, the term borderless started even, way before this last year, especially, as I shared with you that during COVID, the idea of borderlessness came to me more. And then it happened during COVID, national borders start to drop because protection. And even though my husband and I had lived apart for many years because of work, living, across boundaries, across different time zones, during COVID, we didn't even get to see one another in person for over 8 months. And that was when the border started to become an image that is constricting. And then during our leadership program, and also the way that the world was starting to change, and the sense of the design of society seems to need something more. We were in a leadership program, and I'm seeing a lot of boundaries, even not necessarily within us, but then it was just that atmosphere. So what can we go beyond that? What does it mean? And just right around that period is also about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The mid-term report came out that 191 nation states signed to say that we are going to do to reach certain targets to maintain sustainability of the world. And the report came out saying that we are not likely to reach those targets. And my question then was like, what does it take for leaders to go beyond just this, what is necessary now for my nations? A lot of the themes that under the Sustainable Development Goals are beyond nations. We all want to have peace. We all want to have poverty reduction. We all want to have clean water. Everyone have the basic education. So what is it that is holding us back? So what is the right stuff for Borderless-Centred leadership? So that's how it got started for me.
I want to pick up on what you've mentioned, Lina, kind of awareness of the borders in the times of COVID and how every nation wanted to assure its safety. And that is the function of borders. They exist for a reason, right? At national level, but also every cell in a body has a border, right? And the purpose of that is to ensure safety and integrity of its functioning within. And in the same way, every body has a border, a boundary, right? And it serves a purpose. But what also came to me as I've been thinking about this concept is that every single border in nature is permeable. And it's prepared to adapt when that serves life. So you know the crab who outgrows its shell and steps out of it because there is more to life than just living in that small shell, right? And every tree kind of pops through the seed to grow into a big tree. So that permeability of borders, kind of respecting the fact that they serve, and in certain contexts they might be needed. It's a useful conversation in leadership to have a design around our boundary conditions, right? But the trouble in my mind, as I am interpreting it now, is becoming a trouble when we start to see borders as truths, unmovable, solid, cast forever, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where we're losing adaptability. That's where we're losing ability to relate, connect, adjust, grow. So recognizing the need for safety, and that is an important one, and kind of really exploring that virtue, and I really see it that way, of permeability of border. I'm becoming curious in what it is that can provide safety in a different way, right? So borders is one answer to that. And we can still use it in some contexts, right? And we do. What else? Right? And Catherine, when I kind of read through your thinking and then I've heard you talking right now, when you talk about anchoring, that also kind of gives me that sense of, hey, there is stability and ability to maintain my integrity very powerfully, but not necessarily through a border, but through something else. And I just wanted to kind of invite you to elaborate on that.
I completely understand what you're saying about safety and that we are defined by borders, just physically as bodies. What I like to think about, though, is that I might be sitting in my body in Switzerland, you're sitting in your body in Holland, and Duncan's in Wales and Lina's in Oxfordshire. And tonight, after our call, we'll all go outside, the sky will be clear, and we'll all be staring at the same stars, the same moon, and we're all connected with this. We are living on the same planet, which in that moment, when we're all staring at the same stars, wherever we are in the world, we are united, even though we are within our own physical boundaries, even though we have different passports, different languages, different cultures. And so this is what I try to, this is also what I try to bring is, yes, I have my anchor. I know who I am. It's important for me to know who I am so that I can have the right impact. But at the same time, it's important for me to realize that I'm staring at the same stars as everybody else on this planet. And we all have dreams when we're staring at those skies, at the sky or at the stars or the moon. And borderless-centred leadership is one way of allowing people to live their dreams.
I love what you both have said, Tatiana and Catherine, especially bringing one thing, it is about the permeability for safety. That part, I heard you talk about that before, Tatiana, and I really like that. It is talking about almost inner boundary and that outer part receptiveness. I don't know, this is, when you said it, a lot of times that is what came to mind. And then, and then the stars, what came to mind right at that moment, Catherine, was that, I don't know if you remember that, that very, very first image from out of space when the astronauts took, of the Earth, that blue image of the Earth. And that is as much as this is it. This is us here. And the borders become almost like artificial construct. So what does it mean for us if we are beyond that? So that is continuing, my questioning, that is that just an ideal borderless-centered leadership?
The words that have come up that have really impacted me listening to you three speaking, like open and anchored, fear and conflict. For me, we all get this choice, this personal leadership choice of where do I come from? So an essential choice. You can come from two places. Do I come from the belief, living, the way of being, that I see the world as a place of scarcity, where survival is the primary goal? If I come from scarcity, survival, status seeking, self-promotion, then that informs how I'm showing up. It's almost like with a heart at war, Tatiana, for me. And for people where survival is still the daily concern, there is no choice, that becomes important. The four of us have the privilege in this moment of being able to choose something different. And we saw people in our leadership program coming literally from war zones, who have a choice in how they show up. And rather than coming from scarcity and survival, we can come from our essence and a sense of abundance, orienting towards service and trust. And so this open and anchored, it really spoke to me, Catherine, like being anchored in what I believe to be true, how I see the world, my truth, until such times I'm willing to change it and swap it out for a different truth. So for me, this, like, again, coming from the center, being anchored in what I'm here for. Am I here for survival because I believe in scarcity? Am I here to serve something greater than myself, beyond myself? And boundaries, I guess there's something about time as well, because when you think about that Earthrise shot and you see the context of the planet, and as we enter this new Anthropocene age where human behavior and action is the greatest impact on climate, then, we're here for a limited amount of time. Even our species is. We weren't always here and we won't always be here. Something else will take our place. So, like, what is it about ego that calls us to action versus a sense of stewardship, something better that comes? So we get this choice to show up from a place of curiosity, openness, to witness somebody else's lived experience, to understand what they need, and if we believe in abundance, and how can we make what we have more available? How do we consume less ourselves? How do we give up a little bit less for ourselves in order that other people can be included? Something around inclusion that I think is worth mentioning here when it comes to borders as a unit of belonging. allocation of resources or access to resources.
Love that. A lot of what you are now touching speaks to me. And the first that I want to kind of bring in or highlight is that leadership, it feels like especially leadership nowadays, but maybe it's been like that always. But it definitely feels to me that leadership nowadays needs and kind of has a prerequisite for ability to hold paradox. How this and that seemingly dichotomy and contradicts each other can be true, and how there's multiple truths and direct choices and solutioning in the real world, in a day-to-day, right? How the need for survival that is present in any living organism, human beings are not exempt from it, is indeed the driver for how life is organized, right? Organizing itself. But equally, how that need for growth and transcending the survival kind of mindset and shell, right? Speaking of that crap, and contributing to something bigger than me is another very valid true driver. I know that there is a lot of complexity in the world, and there is paradox of needing a border, and also wanting, longing for transcendence of it. And actually the very empirical proof that it's already a reality when you look at the starry sky, right? And at the same time, I'm choosing to direct my attention. I'm aware of all those, and I'm directing my attention to this because that serves most.
I think I hear purpose in what you say. Purpose, the thing that is bigger than me. And if survival is the primary purpose, then that's a big purpose to survive and to live through. Catherine, you spoke about presence and connection.
And belonging.
And belonging, like in and across borders.
Yeah. It's I think it comes back again to this anchor and open. This, which in itself is a paradox. You need to be present. You need to be aware of the impact that you have. You need to be aware of what is going on in your own world before you can open yourself up and be curious and demonstrate the values that are expected of leaders nowadays. So wanting people to grow, having empathy, curiosity I mentioned, but belonging as well, and courage. It requires a lot of courage. And I think presence, from my perspective, helps you to have that courage, because you're more self-aware and more confident and more steady, steadfast, grounded, and this enables you then to expand and to be more spacious, more gracious, and more, I want to say all-encompassing. More, yeah, I'm making this gesture with my arms, which is about, including and welcoming and leading from the heart, showing people the way to go from the heart, showing the direction from the heart, which comes back to what Tatiana was saying.
I think one of you mentioned that belonging, the true belonging, starts within. And I see that in my coaching practice a lot these days, that kind of the way we relate internal translate into the way we relate external with other people. And sometimes my clients, they have that part of them or several parts of them that they don't really integrate, right? So they are kind of trained and habitually condemn that part, right? Mark it as wrong. And that exclusion internally creates a very spiky, sticky kind of curve in our form when we connect with others, right? It's very easy to rub wrongly against that thing, right? And it also legitimize internally that exclusion piece. If something is not wanted, I just exclude that, right? And that creates the issue with inclusion, the issue with belonging, because real inclusion and belonging is about integrating those parts, giving voice to even those that's been historically or traditionally or habitually condemned and marked as not useful, hidden, pushed out, marginalized, and integrating them into the wholeness of who we are. And Duncan, I really loved how you, in one of your writings, you've put it that there is this ability to cross thresholds, the borders outside. Really is about love threshold. And I just wanted to invite you to talk about it, because for me it resonates both in that external world, but also internal, like how much that capacity for integration and creating true inclusion and belonging inside me and outside me, I actually want to support and hold and stand for.
Tatiana, thank you for pointing me at the threshold work. It's an idea I've come across. When it comes to leadership and leaders, I try and frame my language specifically around leadership, because whether you're in corporate life or not, whether you have a title and people management responsibilities or not, leadership shows up every day, from the way you come back to your family at the end of a day at the office that's been terrible, right? The way you show up, how you choose to be moment to moment, and how you choose to respond or react. That's the place of leadership. But when it comes to taking action in service of a goal, there are 5 thresholds we tend to cross. So the first one, just to give it a sense, is the silliness threshold. Like if I were to share one of my dreams out loud with you, I'm going to feel silly talking about something that I want, because it just feels silly. I feel silly for saying something so ridiculous. You might laugh. You might think it's silly that I wanted to leave an amazing tech job in the US and come back to the UK. Some of my friends did think it was ridiculous that I would do such a thing. So the silliness threshold is the first one. It's a reason to stop before we start, or a reason to quit before we make meaningful progress. I just feel silly wanting for this. And there's a few more thresholds, and you get to the 5th threshold, and they're all a version of this, which is the love threshold, which is ultimately the idea that if I really commit to this and take action on this, I'm going to discover that actually I'm not worthy of success. I'm going to realize that I'm not worthy for this. And even worse, other people are going to see that I'm not worthy. And I learned these ideas from a coach mentor who's passed away last year. He sent me a copy of his book, and he signed it and said, "Everybody needs your love." And then in brackets, especially you. So that work on vulnerability, Brené Brown's work on shame, like I am worthy, like whatever it is that I want, like the world needs more dreamers. There's nothing silly about envisioning a world that is different in the future than it is today. That self-permission and self-authority, the permission to dream of something wildly different, fantastically different, to dream of something that is beyond the scope of what I've learned as possible. So a self-limiting belief I carried for a long time, still do, funnily enough, is I'll never be a CEO. I'll never be the number one at the top of an organization, because I don't feel I am visionary. I think I'm an excellent second in command. If I buy into your idea, your vision of the future, I'll move mountains to create it and fill the gaps for you. But I'll never be that myself. And yet here I am, effectively the founder and CEO of my own business.
You see, I really want to kind of highlight that, what you're saying, because it's so deeply meaningful for me. We've talked about courage and how courage is required for, frankly, leadership, but borderless-centered leadership in particular, right? If we really frame it that way, courage is required, because we need to go into the unknown. We need to go beyond ego. We need to go for something that is so humongous. It's by design bigger than us. And then, oh my God, is that scary, right? And the home of courage, and that is what I'm learning. And it's probably not the only source of it, but maybe it is a home, is that sense of worthiness, is that inner integration and that inner policy of inclusion and belonging within myself that makes me truly say, yes, I'm not perfect. And yes, I am worthy. And I can then ground and anchor, and I can then safely open up because it's truly so.
Talk about openness. Catherine, you wrote about dropping armor, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
Not to be open, you got to take your armor off and risk saying something, risk being seen.
Yeah, risk being vulnerable. Even my husband was telling a story this weekend where he met up for dinner with a former colleague and told her things that he'd never told her when he was her boss, and he said, "Yes, I could never tell her that," and I think this is we challenged him. Well, three women challenged him, said, "Well, where's your vulnerability?" And how can you? What if you had shared those things with her, would she have changed her opinion of you as a person, or would she maybe have appreciated more? Would she have seen your vulnerability? Would she have seen, well, actually, he's not this facade that I think he is. He's not this tall guy who knows it all. He's actually someone who has feelings and dreams and issues like we all have, and that requires a lot of courage to be that vulnerable. Of course, you cannot share everything, and there are some borders, but I think there is a way of as you say, making other people feel worthy by feeling worthy yourself, by belonging to yourself. When you belong to yourself, when you feel worthy, then that's the impact that you have on others as well, that they count, that they are seen, that they are heard.
I was going to ask about identity and belonging. Because Lina, I know you've moved around a lot. Catherine, you live and work in a different culture and had that experience. I wonder if there's something to visit on around identity and how you cross those boundaries.
I think during the leadership program, this is one of the things that really came across to me. I've always wondered to ask myself, where do I belong? Do I belong in Scotland, where my father is buried? Do I belong in London, where I was born, in Paris, where I grew up, in Switzerland, where I live with my husband? Where on earth do I belong? And how I felt I was missing something. I was craving for this sense of having roots, having my own borders and saying, this is my place, this is where I belong. Planting a stake, this is my home. And during the leadership program, I got a completely different insight. I think it was during one of our morning routines where we had to stand and feel the earth under our feet. In nature, we were in the middle of the vineyards, and I just had this moment where I was like, I belong here. It doesn't matter where I am. I just stand on this earth, and wherever I am, I belong. And I am fixed to the core of this earth in whatever place I am. And so this helped me to reconnect with my identity, because I am a bit messed up when it comes to identity. But does it really matter what my passport says? I think we each bring a set of unique characteristics. I have a certain background, certain education, lived in different countries, worked in different countries, different roles. But this is my suitcase. This is what I carry around with me. That's who I am. And that's how I see identity. But how is it for you, Lina? Because you're also a world traveler.
Yeah, but I resonate so much with what you said just now, Catherine, about the belonging and identity. It's very strange. Only recently, maybe the last 4 or 5 years, that I learned about the labeling, this label for third culture kid. when I first heard it, I felt a sense of belonging there. In Third Culture Kid, really is about growing up outside of your parents' home country. And so I was born in Hong Kong. My mom's from China, and my father's from Taiwan. And I left Hong Kong when I was 16. And something that, one question that I hate a lot is, where are you from? It's like, okay, where do I start? Another question is, what is your mother tongue? Now, that is very hard because the assumption is about mother tongue, then you are very fluent in that. I'm not fluent in my mother tongue. So only recently that I know how to answer that is that I don't really have a mother tongue, but English is my best language, but it is not my mother tongue, not my first language, and I'm not even perfect, but that's the best I can do. And people just look at me kind of like, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to say? So for me to be able to say that I'm a third culture kid, and basically what it means is living on the periphery. And that resonated a lot with what Tatiana was talking about. Borders are permeable. And that means that we can draw it the way we want it or the way that we need it. And that gives permission to be whatever you want to be. So if we are talking about leadership and being a leader, it's not so much as you are given the role, the title to lead something. It is your being. What is it that will support you so that you can stretch beyond this, you need to do something, this short-term, quick win and action now kind of context towards that beyond that we talked about earlier. And then what came to mind also as you were all talking about connections, conflicts, and anchoring, even privilege. It is our privilege to be here in this world for a limited amount of time. And that privilege is about that we really are just stewards of this world. And the term intergenerational equity becomes a very close to my heart. If we are only steward at this point, how do we leave it? If not better, at least not worse than when we came to it. So leadership and leaders, to me, is that we don't need to be given that title. So we all have it in us. And how do we mine it, bring it out to surface it?
Here in Wales, I might need to fact check myself here. I believe that in our government setup here in Wales, we have a minister for future generations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do.
Which I found initially surprising and strange and weird, and increasingly I find it really interesting and intriguing because it's another dimension of inclusion for me, including the voices of people that aren't actually here yet.
Yeah. I think actually it's the first in the world, the Ministry of Futures. I don't remember if that is what it's called, or a commission or something, but I think it is Ministry of the Futures.
And that links back to deep democracy, right? How we can go beyond our identity, which has those already available kind of touch points, and includes voices that are not necessarily our own, but really try them on and fill them in and stand for them, like in this case, the future generations that are not here right now, right? That kind of expansion of identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that really is a stretch, and that is my dream. You know, we talk about dreaming. If we don't dream it, we don't even know how to get back to the essence of us, each one of us.
For me, what this conversation has gotten me to thinking about is purpose. Navigating borders in service of something. The leadership is about purpose. If your purpose is survival, that's going to dominate day to day and is important. But leadership, like what I've heard from this conversation, is communication, as in listening and seeing other people, actually witnessing other people's experience, being open to that, to build safety and intimacy and trust so that we can collaborate better across the borders that do exist. And we can share our resources and get access to other people so we can work together and collaborate in service of something important. So for me, this brings me pretty much straight to purpose-driven leadership. What are we leading for? Who are we leading? Where are we going? For what reason? What's at stake?
Yeah. For me, I want to build on that because that, sure, is my takeaway. And it's placed in a context of how do we transcend ego? How do we really dare to go beyond fear and survival and impermeable borders, right? And the only truth. And that requires volumes of courage. And then what gives fuel to that courage? And in this conversation, what is highlighted to me, yes, it's purpose, that connection to that is bigger than me. And it is that internal belonging system that spills over into the external belonging system, because I start to practice day to day in real terms how the other voices that are not habitual to me are equally important, and I'm tuning into them.
What I found interesting about this conversation is that there's many different ways of looking at it and that there's many different perspectives. So in a sense, even the theme of borderlessness or borderless-centred leadership is borderless, and there's many facets to it. It's not black and white. We can look at it from a lot of different perspectives and probably talk about it for ages and ages. But I think, yes, purpose for me is super important. That's kind of my guiding flame. And we didn't talk much about family. I think, Duncan, you mentioned it at the beginning, that it's not just about leading at work, but it's also in how you are as a person. I have 6 nephews and a niece, and this is my vision as well, is that they will carry on this flame, that they will know how to be borderless-centered leaders. For me, this is super important.
The borders that limit your leadership most are not on any map. They live inside you, in the beliefs you have inherited, identities you have defended, and assumptions you have stopped questioning. We're excited you joined this conversation. Next week, we go deeper into what it means to act today in service of a future you haven't yet seen. This is Borderless. We will see you there.